In the vast expanses of the Masai Mara Game Reserve, which stretches out in the southern part of Kenya, under the scorching sun of the savannah, lived a small herd of elephants. Just 7 individuals. Their home was the green plains bordered by the Teluk River, whose cool waters served as salvation on hot days. At the head of the herd stood a wise and strong elephant named Nala, whose long, slightly worn tusks were like a symbol of her fortitude. She led her family through the dry months, finding shady corners and rare pools of water to water and feed everyone. Among the elephants, a small elephant named Milo stood out, who was barely 9 months old. He was a real rascal. He was always running around his mother, poking her sides with his tiny trunk, playing with branches and trying to catch butterflies fluttering above the tall grass. Milo was the favorite of the herd. His mischievous antics made even the most serious elephants snort softly with pleasure. Every evening, when the sun sank to the horizon, the herd went to the muddy shallows of the Teluk River. There they splashed in the water, threw mud at each other to protect themselves from annoying insects, and enjoyed the peace, listening to the murmur of the river. This idyllic life continued for months, until one day the sky darkened with heavy clouds. A rainstorm such as the Masai Mara had not seen for decades fell on the savannah. It rained for 4 days and 4 nights, turning the plains into a sea of mud. The Teluk River burst its banks, flooding everything around. Trees fell, paths disappeared under the muddy streams, and the herd's familiar landmarks dissolved in the chaos of water and mud. The elephants, frightened by the roar of the water and the peals of thunder, panicked and rushed towards the hills, where the land was higher and drier. They ran, sinking into the mud, their powerful legs slipping and their ears pressed against their heads and feet. In this confusion, no one noticed how little Milo fell behind. His thin voice calling for his mother was drowned in the noise of the rain. Only when she reached the safety of the hill, Nala turned around to check on her herd. Her heart sank. Milo was not there. She let out a long, heart-rending roar that seemed to shake the entire savannah. Ignoring the rain, Nala ran back to the river, her eyes blazing with anxiety, her trunk darting from side to side, as if trying to catch even the slightest trace of her babe. She called to him, but only the sound of the water and the echo of her own cry answered. The other elephants stood on the hill watching Nala. Their ears were down, their eyes full of sorrow. No one dared approach the distraught mother. Her cries echoed day and night, spreading across the Masai Mara. They were so powerful that even the birds fell silent, and the antelopes froze, listening to this cry of despair. The game reserve rangers patrolling the area heard strange sounds. At first they thought it might be a conflict between animals, perhaps lions attacking a herd or elephants running into poachers. A team led by an experienced ranger named Kamau set off for the river in a jeep. When they arrived, they saw Nala standing alone near the bank. Her tusks glistened in the rain, and her eyes, full of tears, looked into the murky waters. There were no signs of a struggle or injuries, and the rangers assumed it was simply stress caused by the flooding. They drove away, leaving Nala to her grief. But the rain did not stop, and Nala continued to stand in the cold mud, not moving. Her cries grew weaker, but the pain in them did not subside. The next day, a young ranger named Amina, who had recently joined the team, noticed that Nala was behaving unusually. She remembered the photographs of the herd taken the previous week during their patrol by the river. When she counted the elephants in the pictures, Amina gasped. There had been 7 of them, and now only 6 had been seen by the river. She immediately shared her guess with Kamau. Nala hasn't gone mad. She's lost her baby. Kamau frowned after listening to Amina. If that's true, then time is short. We need to act. He assembled a team of 10 rangers and called for reinforcements from a nearby village. They devised a search plan. They would split into 3 groups, each of which was to comb a certain area along the Teluk River, including tributaries and swampy lowlands. The rangers were armed with radios, GPS navigators, ropes and camera. Some of them were skeptical. If the baby fell into the stream, there is almost no chance. He is too small. But Amina insisted. Nala does not give up, and neither should we. The search began at dawn. The rain had eased, but the ground was slippery and the air was damp. The rangers walked along the banks, carefully examining every track, every hole, every broken bush. The first day brought no results. Only mud, fallen trees and washed out trash. On the second day, Amina led her group to a swampy lowland, where the water after the flood often stagnated, forming swamps. The ground there was treacherous. Under a thin layer of mud, deep holes were hidden, capable of swallowing even an adult animal. On the third day, when the sky was covered with gray clouds, Amina's group reached an old swamp. Fog lay over the ground, and everything around seemed dead. Suddenly, Amina stopped. Her ear caught a faint sound, like a soft moan, barely audible in the silence. She raised her hand, calling for everyone to be quiet, and slowly moved towards the source of the sound. There, in a pile of black mud, something was moving. A small trunk covered in mud twitched weakly, and a pair of tired eyes opened. It was Milo, alive, but barely breathing. "We found him. He's alive," Amina screamed, calling for reinforcements on the radio. The rangers rushed to the baby elephant. His body was half buried in sticky mud, and his breathing was weak. Amina knelt beside him, whispering, "Hold on, baby. We'll get you out." They named him Milo, which meant beloved in the local dialect. Help arrived at the swamp: a tractor, some locals, and extra equipment. The rangers tied ropes around Milo, being careful not to hurt his weak body. Others dug around, removing mud with shovels and hands. Some poured warm water from canisters to wash the mud from his eyes and nose and to warm him up. The tractor pulled slowly on the ropes, but the slippery ground made it slip. The men pushed the machine, balancing in the mud, their clothes and faces covered in mud, but no one complained. Milo was shaking. His small body was on the verge of exhaustion, but he still fought. After hours of hard work, Milo was finally freed. His bruised body looked fragile, but he was alive. When his trunk moved slightly, the rangers and villagers cheered. Amina wrapped him in her blanket, whispering, "You did it, Milo." He was laid on a wooden platform covered with straw and carefully loaded into a heated truck. A veterinary team was waiting at the center of the reserve, ready to receive the baby. At the center, Milo was placed in a warm room with a soft floor. The doctors examined him. There were abrasions on his body, and his legs were covered with small cuts from rocks and branches carried away by the stream. He was given warm milk, mashed bananas, soft grass, and fluids to restore his strength. Amina visited every day, sat with him, told him stories about the savannah, and stroked his trunk. After a few days, Milo began to lift his head, and then took his first tentative steps. When he drank water for the first time on his own, the entire center rejoiced. After 10 days, the vets decided Milo was ready to rejoin the herd. He was loaded into a special truck and driven to the plain, where Nala's herd was grazing. As if sensing the coming, Nala stood at the edge of the field, her ears pricked, her eyes scanning the horizon. As the truck stopped, Milo let out a small but clear roar. Nala responded with a loud call and ran towards him, her trunk wrapped around the baby, holding him close. Milo rubbed against her legs, making happy sounds, and the rest of the herd surrounded them, welcoming the baby back. Amina and Kamo stood to the side, watching the reunion. Nala's eyes, full of gratitude, met Amina's for a moment. Milo turned his head and looked at the rangers, as if saying goodbye. It was a moment when nature and people became one, united by a common goal: to save a life. The sunset painted the sky in crimson tones, and Milo's story spread throughout the Masai Mara. It became a legend about hope, mother's love, and human kindness. Amina continued to work as a ranger, but in her bag she always kept a small photo of Milo, a reminder of the day when a small call from the swamp led to a miracle. Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, don't forget to support our channel, like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories about wildlife.